Hello everybody, this is Philip Martin, and welcome to OnFilm on Video. I think that's Paris back there. Hi Paris. And just crawled into the frame just there as we started. Alright. She'll probably sit there the whole time and nobody will ever notice her move or anything like that. This is March 4th, 2022. It is the Batman Day, the much delayed The Batman Day. Full disclosure, I haven't seen the movie yet. I probably will see it by the time this hits air. I probably will have seen it. But as of now, it's Wednesday. In my life, in your life, it's at least Friday or maybe later, unless you snuck on and saw this some other way. And I haven't devoted the 3 hours to seeing it yet. So it looks like an interesting take. I mean, I've read Piers's review of it, and I've read Courtney Lanning's take on it. And I might be intrigued by this one. I was really intrigued by Christian Bale's Batman at the beginning. It sort of ran out of steam for me. But what I would want in a Batman is not necessarily what everybody wants. Would be to lean into that human kind of psychopathic part of Batman, that sort of meanness and that thirst for revenge, and that this is a guy who has to make rules for himself so he doesn't kill, his the people he's the malefactors that he's bringing to justice. He has to set himself these parameters. I would really like to see somebody lean into that sort of Batman as a flawed human being, a Batman as villain even. But, I don't think this film does that. But maybe we'll get that at some point, and you will get some sort of, auteurs, independent look at Batman. I don't imagine that'll happen as long as the intellectual property is owned by Warner Brothers and their like, but some fan fiction maybe. I don't know what to say when these big movies come out, except that they're probably fine. I mean, if you like that sort of thing, that's fine. I mean, I don't feel like I should make a big deal about them one way or another, because they just are inevitable spectacles that we have, and I'm sure that there's more or less grace notes in this, and I mean, think that Robert Pattinson could be a really interesting, Bruce Wayne / Batman. Some of the actors they have lined up in there is Turturro, Colin Farrell, Paul Dano. They're very it's a very interesting cast. Zoe Kravitz. I think that you could. Jeffrey Wright. I think you could do a lot with these actors and with this premise. The thing about a superhero movie is they've all got to resolve in the same way, in the same sort of, good versus evil, high stakes clash at the end. And, okay, that's fine. That's sort of the American kabuki. We do that with our superhero movies because they are superheroes, and superheroes don't exist. I mean, they're not real. The thing is, Batman is potentially real. He's not, he doesn't have superpowers. He is a rich guy who has trained a lot and really cares about beating people up. And, I mean, he's a plausible superhero. I mean, he would be locked up. He would be, probably murdered very quickly if he did in real life the stuff he does in the movies. But even so, he's still a character that should be relatable, and that we should be able to, come up with some interesting stories about. Whether this is an interesting story about that or not, I'll have to reserve judgment till I've seen it. But anyway, it's sort of, it's another one. It's out. It's fine. It's fine. I really wanted to talk about Sam Elliott, who's one of these beloved figures. And I've been watching him in 1883, which is the prequel. That sounds really weird to say, but the prequel to the Yellowstone series, which honestly I gave up on Yellowstone after about 4 or 5 episodes. I just didn't really, it may be a touch too operatic for my taste. It's whatever it is. I mean, I don't think it's as good as it's been praised. I don't think it's awful either. I just didn't think it was something that I wanted to spend a whole lot of time getting invested in. But anyway, I have been watching 1883, and I have the final episode queued up right now. As soon as probably this evening, we'll probably watch that. But because I'm in the business, I already know some spoilers. I'm not going to spoil them for you here, but Sam Elliott's in it, and Sam Elliott is a really likable presence. He's got the voice, he's got the mustache, he's got the look. He's 77 years old, and he looks tough as nails. And he's, I was really happy to see that these last 10 years or so, he's really sort of come into his own and enjoyed a real sort of stardom that he didn't have before that. I mean, even when he was in The Big Lebowski, I think he was really more known as a character actor. A lot of people did not know that the guy with the mustache, the cowboy with the mustache, was Sam Elliott. They wouldn't, that's my remembrance of it. I think a lot of people referred to him as the guy with the mustache. But anyway, he made some remarks totally uncalled for on the Mark Maron podcast about Power of the Dog, about how he couldn't understand why it was so gay. Basically, is what he was saying. I can't understand why it's so gay. Why do they have to make it so gay? I've been in the West, and there's families there, and I've made westerns, and they're like. And he doesn't come across really well. And I mean, he shouldn't come across really well. Come across, to be frank, as homophobic. Which is really interesting for a guy who made Lifeguard. It was his first movie. Or his first movie that he really got caught in. It really caught fire. He starred in that. And it is... you want to talk about a gay subtext. Lifeguard's a movie with a gay subtext. Maybe Sam Elliott never caught on to that. Maybe he never realized that. I don't know. But he's, and movies are not supposed to be. Movies are works of art. Movies are constructs. Movies are imagined things. They're not real life, and they don't pretend to be real life, Sam. You know that. Your characters, are pretty much, some of them are pretty much right out of the funny papers. They're just big, strong He-Men, and God bless you for that. And, I was glad to see you in 1883 where you were really cool. You were the coolest guy in there. And the oldest, which gives some of us hope. It's great. But, man... it's just not a good look to go after this film that way. It's like, yes, couple of points he made. One point I kind of agree with, and that is that I don't think New Zealand really stands in for Montana all that well. It does look wild, but it looks wild in a different way. It looks wild and untamed, and the mountains don't look the same. But that's such a minor thing. And the main thing about the New Zealand setting is when they get near the river and stuff. That's like those trees don't grow in Montana. That's not the kind of foliage they have. But that's like I said, I wouldn't complain about that. It's interesting that he seemed to think it was such a bad movie, and that Jane Campion really had no right to go in here and tell this kind of story. When the actual story was written by a gay man, Thomas Savage, and it was about his experiences in the West, really. He translated through a work of fiction. But he's every work of fiction draws from something, and Savage was drawing from his own experience. And this whole thing about closeted cowboys. Of course, Sam seems to want to put this like dome over the old West, and deny that there was any sort of this stuff going on. And of course it was going on. I mean, it's like whatever you want to consider, there's a certain percentage of the population that is turned that way. That, you could go the Gore Vidal route and say we're all a little gay, or we're all, it's just a percentage. But there's, it's like there were gay people in the West. There's no doubt about it. There were gay cowboys. I wonder what Sam thought of Brokeback Mountain. And on one hand, I want to dismiss it as just like, an old guy who didn't get the movie. And that's okay, because there's lots of movies that lots of us don't get. Just kind of going off, well, this is crap. I want to do Mike McMurray voice from Letterkenny, but it's not that kind. You know what I mean? It's like McMurray, at least when he's doing that, is going, well, I ain't one of you, but you're a pretty good fella. You seem good enough guy. Come on, Sam. Gay people existed. They were in the West. People had experiences with them. This is a very plausible type of story that might be told. And it's not about being gay or not being gay. It's about this sort of toxic masculinity that imposes these expectations and this code of rigor on men especially. Everybody's had constrained roles in this world, but to be a gay cowboy, a gay man working on a ranch in Montana in 1920 had to be a different kind of experience, even if you're the guy that kind of owns a ranch. And Benedict Cumberbatch's character, Phil, packs all that down and develops this way of dealing with people, this mien, this persona, this sort of exaggerated portrait of masculinity that he pushes out on the world. And it becomes him. And even though we have all these hints that this guy is really this literate and sort of arty guy, really good banjo player, has a penchant for music and knows his Latin and has read his literature, and yet he chooses to, be this guy who, as Sam Elliott points out, goes to bed in his chaps, and likes to stink, likes to be out there in the dirt, and revels in this sort of weird idea of masculinity, Meanwhile, there's this young boy who comes in, and I'm not going to spoil it for those of you who haven't seen the movie, I guess, but it's sort of like, it is a grooming story, but the grooming doesn't go exactly the way that you might expect it to. And I can see how people might be upset by this story, because the story is very unnerving. It's a story about revenge, and it's very cold-blooded and very analytical, and I think, they get away with it in the end. But anyway, I'm not, it's like Sam Elliott, I love the guy, love to watch him. But as we're constantly reminded these days, we don't know these people. We don't know these people we invite into our houses, that we watch on screens, that we, they are manufactured personas that we accept or don't accept. I mean, I think I could have a beer with Sam Elliott. I don't think that we'd have any trouble getting along. I'm disappointed that this came out, and I really, like I said, I really don't understand it, because it sort of didn't have, it was a throwaway question at the end of an hour with him telling stories and being, amiable with Mark Maron. And then he comes out and, and there's a lot of hostility there that's buried, and I don't know where it comes from. But of course, a woman from New Zealand can make a movie about the American West that has gay people in it. There are other things you could have picked on, I guess. The mountains you could have picked on. You could have picked on the woods. But the American West was not what it's perceived to be, or what it's presented to be in Westerns. I mean, that's sort of... the American myth is really wrong there. I mean, sort of, it was a lot dirtier, a lot meaner. Even when then the revisionist restaurants come and show us that dirty, mean sort of stuff, and it wasn't exactly that either. It was all kinds of stuff. It's not McCabe and Mrs. Miller exactly, but it's not Tombstone either. Another movie with gay subtext in it. I believe Sam Elliott had something to do with. Anyway, so I don't know. It's just it's disappointing when we find out people that we admire for no reason except for we like to watch them on screen, have these sort of attitudes that we kind of think are kind of cringy. I don't want to cancel Sam Elliott. I watched 1883. I'm going to watch the final episode tonight. I'm going to be, entertained by it or not. 1883 is one of those series that drives me nuts in that it's got this hyper literate narrator who's really kind of not very... She thinks she's a poet, and she's not really. Okay, it's just, she didn't write the lines, the poor actress, but boy, there's some turgid stuff to get through. The good thing about 1883, though, is that aside from this narrated portion, the acting's really good. Tim McGraw's really good. Faith Hill's really good in it. Sam Elliott's really good in it. I can't remember her name, is really good at it when she's not reading the narrated parts that Taylor Sheridan actually put a whole lot of effort into. I just wish he had done away with that and shown us and not told us this. But anyway, that's 1883. That's my dime store review of that, my little thing on Sam Elliott, and Batman. The first Batman I knew was probably the Adam West one. I'm trying to think, because the 60s, I think that Batman went off in 1966, and that would have been about the time I was actually getting into comic books. And I didn't have a very long comic book period, but for a couple of years I really read pretty intensely, and Batman was one of my favorites. Batman and Captain America, actually. And for some reason I was sort of interested in this this kind of talk about gay subtext one more time about the relationship between Batman and Robin and Captain America and Bucky. And there was one Captain America comic that still bothers me to this day. Is some weird... I don't really... I would recognize the panels, I think, if I saw them now, but I can't really tell you the story, except a lot of it took place in this hospital / asylum, where Bucky was in there, and the Red Skull was like one of his doctors or something. It was really bizarre, and I've had nightmares about it. But anyway, the first Batman I guess I knew was Adam West, this goofy sort of kind of vaudevillian Batman that was, all played for camp and for kitsch. And that's really where camp sort of enters the American television lexicon, I believe. Someone can correct me on that, but I think that, the whole idea of it being this exaggerated and sort of gay kind of aesthetic would be that first Batman. And like I said, I prefer my Batmen, my Bat people, my Bat persons, to be more plausible and less heroic and more problematic. I like the idea of a problematic Batman. Somebody who you really don't want to be alone with. It's somebody who's looking for, a chance to right wrong. Who's got really just a little bit too intense for prime time. Someday, maybe I'll do my, little superhero thing, because I really, have thought a little bit about this. And Batman's a great entry point because, like I said, you don't have to worry about a radioactive spider or or him being an illegal immigrant from Krypton or anything like that. You could just get some guy, and he really dedicates himself. And it's been done. I mean, real life people dress up and go over. There's somebody who does this in downtown North Little Rock, and he just wanders around, and he's got a costume on, and I guess he rights wrongs when he sees them. Anyway, that's all for this week. I hope it's going smoother. I hope we've worked out all the bugs. I'm not going to tell the story. There's a story. We tried to get some more, but we have some video of the Scream directors, and I can't get it to work. So, maybe we'll get it to work, and maybe it'll be in this edition of the newspaper. I don't know. We'll see. I've got to go work on that right now because, hey, it's still Wednesday. It's production day. Take care, guys.